Okay, we are live. We got to let the stream breathe, make sure it's nice and stable. You guys know the drill. Welcome in, everybody, to the Huddle Up podcast, presented, as always, by Mile High Huddle, powered by Overtime Media. I'm your host, Chad Jensen. With me, as always, my partner in crime, fresh off a few days off, back in the saddle, probably feeling, you seem to be back to 100% coming off the old sinus infection, if not very, very close. But how was your weekend, bro?
I spend it recovering, and I'm not quite 100%, but I'm definitely better than the last time we potted Chad. I'm definitely better. Every day is a little better. It's a long process. Not to get WebMD on everyone right now, but it's I appreciate you asking, and it's nice to be back podcasting. It always feels like a long time from Thursday to Sunday. We just talked about that.
It really does for us. I mean, the podcasts go on, and the community gets their content each and every day. But for us, man, we're just chomping at the bit to get back on the microphone, as it were. Yep. And that's what we're doing tonight. Now, we've got a great show planned for you here this evening. We're going to welcome on the Queen of MHH here in just a few minutes. That's right. Kristie is with us tonight. We're going to bring her on the show in just a couple of minutes. But first, Zach, I wanted to get your take on just overall. It feels like the band is as close to being together as possible. So last week, Jerry Jeudy arrives in Denver. I can't say returns because I don't think he'd ever been in Denver based on what we know from his comments. Now KJ Hamler, it appears, is back in Denver, although he might have been in Denver for a while now. He might have been here for a while. So just based on that Roto World report. But is it a harbinger that maybe they are going to get a phase of OTAs in before the big break, before training camp? Or is it just simply, you think, the call put out by Drew Lock, hey, everybody get back to Denver, let's throw some footballs?
I think it's a combination of Hamler and Jeudy being good pros at this stage in their young rookie careers. They want to be with their team and around their franchise quarterback, and also the city that they're going to live in, Chad. I mean, this is their destination in multiple reasons, on the field and off the field. I like seeing it. I do believe Hamler was participating in those throwing sessions with Drew Lock already. Also with Phillip Lindsay, he was out there as well. But there's no downside to it. I don't think we're going to get any terms of mini camp or practices, at least not a team-sanctioned one. But the more throwing sessions that can take place, the more Lock gets these guys together, it can build that chemistry leading up to training camp. I really am happy to see it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because not only do Lock and company need to get on the same page with Pat Shurmur's scheme and all the new concepts and whatnot, but he's never thrown with Jerry Jeudy. He's never thrown with KJ Hamler. He's never thrown the three of them together and just kind of figuring out the vibe with Courtland Sutton, which we can only assume he's involved in these as well. Yeah. Even though we don't know exactly, we don't have a full roster or list of each and every Bronco that has been participating in these workouts with Drew Lock, but it feels like positive momentum too, Zach. And that's one thing that I like is while the state of the country right now is anything but normalcy, right? It's still something's going on. It's still very tumultuous right now. But as it relates to football, we're inching closer to the kickoff of the season. And I think the activity of these players kind of is a harbinger or a sign or a symbol that will, by the time we get there, you're going to have the season, you're going to have training camp, and that should be reassuring to fans after the weird spring we've had.
I think, off the field, these guys are human beings. Everyone is entitled to their opinion based on what's going on around the country right now, but they're also professional football players, and they want to play football. They want the season to be here. They want to get things in full swing, and Drew Lock is leading that charge as the young franchise quarterback. This is the reason why I'm not worried about a chemistry issue or any sort of turnaround in this weird, unique offseason. I think him getting together off the field, getting that chemistry down by training camp, everyone's on a level playing field either way. And Drew Lock getting these reps in on June 7th and beyond, it's going to be important. It makes a difference.
Amen to that, guys. Let me welcome in those of you who've been hanging out in the stream. It's good to see you, Billy. Of course, Buana joining us as always. Steven's in the house. That's right. And thank you, Steven, by the way, for letting us know. KJ Hamler is in Denver, tweeted or Instagrammed, I should say, visual evidence that he's in Denver. Let's see here. Who else is in this stream? We got Mitch. We got Martina. We got Big E. It's good to see all you guys. And Brent, and if I missed you, you know we love you. We got a great show. I'm a little bit worried here, Zach, because I'm looking at our green room, and all of a sudden it looks like Kristie's camera is off. Can you see that on your side?
Yeah, it's a little symbol.
It's a little symbol. So now we tested, everything was good right before we went live, but
literally a couple minutes ago.
Yeah, I'm a little bit worried. Hopefully we can iron out that kink. She might need to like restart her device, possibly. We'll see. We'll get there. And since she can hear us in the green room, just bear with us one sec, guys. I'm going to say that might be something you could try if you're having problems with your camera, is rebooting your unit. And Zach and I can just keep talking. We can, until we see you in the green room again, we can wait and then pull you back on. So don't feel like it's a problem if you do need to restart. We can roll with the punches. It's all good. But and worst case, I guess, if we can't figure it out, we'll have to make do with maybe just her audio, although I know that wouldn't be the preferred method. But we'll tackle that here in just a few minutes. First, guys, just a couple of really quick matters of business. We want to make sure, as this podcast and this channel on YouTube continues to grow exponentially, we want to make sure everybody knows how to connect with us on social media. Make sure you are following the podcast on Twitter at Huddle Up Pod. That's how you keep your finger on the pulse of what's happening with the show in real time. And then while you're at it, you're going to want to make sure you're also following at Mile High Huddle. That's where you get the breaking Broncos news and analysis in real time right there. Also, gang, if you're in a position, check out huddleuppod.com and get your swag on. Not going to wax poetic on it tonight, but you can get yourself one of these hats. You can get a t-shirt, football priest, Mile High Huddle. We don't quite have a Mile High Insiders gear up on the page yet, but there will be soon. So a little something from whatever your favorite podcast is. We know in your hearts it's Huddle Up, but nevertheless, you want to support all the podcasts. You want to support MHH as a brand. That's how you can do it. And gang, if you're not in a position to use the buy merch right now, a lot of people in tight situations, that's cool. We're just happy to have you here with us. 3 simple things that you can do to really support the cause organically. Subscribe first and foremost if you're on YouTube. Like this video and be sure to share it out there. Those 3 simple things help out more than you guys know. And it looks like, real quick, Zach, it looks like Kristie is probably refiring her computer. So let's buy a little bit of time, guys. Don't you stress. Let's grab a couple of comments and supers that are stacking up here. And then we can even talk about this Courtland Sutton thing that I wanted to get your thoughts on if we need to buy a little bit more time. Bear with me one sec here, gang.
I see the jokes, though, in the comment section.
Let's see. Oh, wait. There she is. There she is. All right, we're good. So I'm going to put off supers. And you know we love you, our super chat superstars, but we have a bona fide superstar in the flesh that we're going to bring on right now. You guys know her. You love her. She is the queen of MHH, as she is known in this community. She is Kristie. Now, gang, just bear with us. If we have a little bit of problems with her screen. Oh, there it went. Uh-oh. Maybe we need to buy a little bit more time, Zach. What do you think?
Yeah.
We can hear her, I think. Yeah, her audio.
We can hear her. I'm just trying to think how I can.
Don't know.
It's okay. When this is the danger, not so much a danger, but sometimes this is what happens when you're doing a live show. When technical things come up, you just gotta kind of roll with the punches. So
it's happened to me more times than I can count, Chad, over the years.
Oh, she's coming back. Oh, almost. All right, grab that, Buana. Yeah, let's grab Drew real quick, who jumped in with a $15 super. Appreciate you, my friend. And he says, and by the way, Drew, I know you can't stay long, but dude, you won if I'm not mistaken, you won the giveaway we did on Apple Podcasts last month. I don't think I've heard back from you, so hit me up on that. Appreciate the support. All right, Kristie, here she is. We got a nice, stable image of the queen of MHH. Kristie, thank you for joining us. How are you?
Good. I'm great. A little nervous.
It's just football. It's just us. It is just the football priest. We're going to have a lot of fun. We wanted to do a couple of things just to let our listeners know what we have on deck here is Zach and I have a few questions that we want to get Kristie's thoughts on. And then any of you who might have questions for Kristie in the chat, we can open it up to 1 or 2 questions if you have anything specific for her. Something might come up while we're talking to her. Just keep it, as always, keep it professional, keep it Bronco oriented, and it's going to be great. So first and foremost, Kristie, we, as someone who lives out on the left coast, you exemplify our little catchphrase here. The Broncos country is not a geographic location. It is a state of being. In California, as a Broncos fan, Zach and I were really curious to know how you became a Broncos fan. Please let us know.
Well, I grew up in Colorado, Longmont, Colorado, actually.
Okay.
And it was kind of just there all around, My parents watched it. My friends watched it. That's just what it is.
So a native of Colorado. Awesome. So that makes a lot of sense. And we assume that you've probably, like a lot of fans of their respective teams, you've probably found a way to it's okay. It's found a way to indoctrinate the kids, if you will. Your kids, do they care much about the Broncos and football?
Of course, they love football. It's just kind of like it's a tradition for us. The whole family gets together. We watch football. It's just what we do. It's a whole team effort.
You are somebody, and Zach, by the way, if you have anything specific you want to ask, by all means, jump in. But I just got one last thing, and then Zach, anything you got for Kristie. We're curious to know, as someone who's been a Broncos fan for a long time, this whole week we're celebrating 7K. We crossed the 7,000 subscriber mark on YouTube, and 7, as we all know, very symbolic number as it relates to the Denver Broncos. Mm-hmm. John Elway, as someone who's been a fan for a long time, it's a 2-pronged question. Number 1, what is your favorite John Elway memory or moment as a player? And then also whatever your favorite Elway moment has been as a front office guy, as a GM.
Well, I have a lot of Elway favorite moments. It's hard to pick just one, but I think as a player, I'm going to be generic and I'm going to say the drive. But I mean, every Broncos fan says that. It's an important part of Broncos history, and I don't know. I'd say as a GM, signing Peyton Manning wasn't too bad, wasn't too shabby, and Von Miller, of course. So,
absolutely. Yeah. Zach, what do you got?
Well, first of all, I hope, Kristie, you can see the comments one of the comments that we're truly among friends here, and you're getting a lot of positive feedback. So I hope that encourages you, and I hope it makes you feel a little better. I mean, there's so many positive things that are being said about you right now, and I hope you're reading that and feeling good about that. I just want to kind of play devil's advocate. This is what I do. What is your least favorite Elway moment as a GM? Because I can name a bunch in the short time I've covered the team. But
I think I probably agree with you on a lot of those, but signing Vance Joseph wasn't that great. Hiring him was a pretty big mistake, and I'd have to go with Flacco. That's just
get me started.
Right in the front of my mind right now. But I mean, he's done a few things that have been questionable, but overall, I'd say he's done a pretty good job.
Yeah, more bad than good.
Can't complain about the Duke.
The way Elway's push to sign Peyton Manning, it was really cool. Whatever it was, I think it was 2 weeks ago, the mothership Sports Illustrated made a whole week Peyton Manning week, and It was fun as a team side covering that. It was cool to kind of see them go back to the vault, as it were, and pull out a bunch of cool interviews and behind the scenes things, especially back then when Peter King was still with SI. And on that topic, Peter King talked about how John Elway, a lot of people think, oh, John Elway, the closer, man. He comes in there, strong arms Peyton, convinces him, lubes up the deal, gets him signed on the line that is dotted, quintessential salesman John Elway, when in actuality, the reason, or one of the reasons, Manning picked the Broncos was because Elway slow played it. He basically came in, him and John Fox, and they said, hey, here's what we think we can do for you. Here's what we envision. And then they just simply put the ball in his court and did not pressure him. And that was one of the reasons why, anyway, it's postulated by Peter King that Peyton Manning chose the Broncos, because no one was really trying to pressure him. They gave him his time and space to make that decision. Let's get some questions here. And by the way, just a quick sound test, just because I don't know, Chris, are you still with us? Oh, muted.
I think she's muted.
Now try, Kristie.
Yeah.
There she is. Okay, good. And guys, listen, as we continue to, we want to bring on superstars from our community here. In the coming weeks and months, we're going to be doing this more and more. I'm sure you guys can understand that it's not, Zach and I, as people who do this for a living, we have all the gear set up. She popped out. We'll get her back. We have all the gear set up. We have the, investment in equipment and everything we need to make sure we're as stable and consistent for you guys as possible. Not everyone has that. So there might be some times like tonight where we're rolling with some of the punches. I just like hearing from Kristie what her thoughts on some of these issues. So while we are waiting to see if she can get reconnected there.
Just want to play off that chat. I want to take this super chat by Duke. He drops $10. Thank you so much, Duke. We appreciate that. Kristie, you're the heart of MHH. Thank you for being so brave and coming on this pod. The reason I wanted to touch on this is because it is not easy. It is completely nerve-wracking, especially for a person who hasn't done this before. I remember when I first started doing Facebook Lives and streams and all that, I was completely white in my face. I was gray. Yeah. It's really a challenge, and she deserves a lot of credit for doing this, and I think the fan base appreciates that. So it's good on you, Duke, to point that out, because I'm sure it's a sentiment that most can agree with. Amen.
Amen to that. Yeah. It is, if you sit and dwell on it, it can be a little bit nerve-wracking thinking that you're kind of on the spot and everyone's looking to you for, whatever you're going to say. It can be a little overwhelming, but I think she's done great. She's doing great and whatnot. The only problem is let's see if we can get her back on. Kristie, can you hear us okay?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. We got you.
I
Good.
just can't get the camera going. So
that's okay. Don't worry about it. That's okay. Don't even fret over it. Let's see, before we get out of here, we want to get your thoughts. Well, we'll get, guys, queue up any questions that you have for Kristie. I've got one more for you. Yeah. We want to know what your outlook is on this team for 2020. If you have a record prediction queued up and ready to go, by all means, but if not, just overall, how you see the 2020 season unfolding for this team.
Yeah, it's so hard to say right now because everything that's going on, and it's crazy right now. And I always want to say like the best possible, prediction for the Broncos. I want to say they're going to go all out and win, but I'm gonna stay safe. I don't want it to come back and bite me in the butt. But I say they go 9-7.
It's fair.
Safely. It's kind of a safe prediction, but I don't know. Fans get so emotional, about everything, and I think we just have to be patient and wait it out. We got a new quarterback. We got a lot of stuff going on right now. I don't know. I think they're going to do a lot better than they did last season.
Playoffs or no playoffs? 97 wild card, right?
Painting her into a corner.
Yeah. I could see it. That would be the best case scenario.
Kristie,
I definitely want them.
One of our listeners here, Brandon, has a question for you. He says, Kristie, are you happy about how the draft played out? Your thoughts on the draft?
Yeah, they scored some pretty good picks, and I'm definitely happy they got Drew Lock. I wasn't expecting that, but I'm glad they did.
Okay, let me see here. Let me see if we have any specific questions here, guys. If you have them for Kristie, we're running out of time. So if you have any specific questions for her, queue them up.
Here's one right here. By Nolan, he wants to know, Christy, who is your favorite Bronco on the roster right now?
Ooh.
Wow.
Lots of choices.
There's so many. There's so many. I would have to say my favorite personally would be Von Miller, but who's gonna kill it this year is probably gonna be Courtland Sutton.
Yep.
I think
that answer.
I think he's gonna go all out this season. And Chubb, he's coming back. So
good call.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Christy, thank you for coming on. Don't worry about the technical difficulties. Next time we have you on, and we do want to have you on again if you're willing, of course. We'll maybe spend a little extra time in the before we go live, trying to just make sure, help you out if there's any technical things. Trust me, as a guy who has been dealing with multiple staff members over the years, over the internet with different technical issues, I, by this point, kind of have a PhD in troubleshooting different technical issues over the internet. So don't stress it, though. Yeah. We're running out of time. Thank you for joining us, and hopefully you'll come back on again. And just know that Zach and I, we appreciate your support and everything that you do for this community, for this podcast, for the channel, and what you mean to everybody.
Thank you for having me. It was fun, and I will definitely come back if you guys have me.
Let's give some love in the comments to Christy, guys and gals.
Have a good night.
Thank you, Christy.
Too, Christy. There she goes, the queen of MHH. You know her, you love her. Christy is in the house. And again, guys, forgive us. Everything was good at the top before we went live. Everything was going good. But unfortunately, sometimes when you're streaming live, you can't exactly predict if there's going to be a technical bug. But at least, gang, we got to talk to Christy. You got to hear from Christy. You got to hear her thoughts on the season. You got to hear how she became a Broncos fan. You got to hear her favorite Elway moment as a player, as a GM. So, Zach, it wasn't a perfect beginning to bring on our Super Chat superstars. But again, can't change it for the world because she's got to be the first one we bring on, the queen of MHH.
Of course, yeah. And I think a lot of people not only wanted her perspective, a female perspective, but also a fan's perspective. Everyone's, hearing us talk, Chad. Everyone's hearing Nick and Carl and Lance and Eric and Luke talk. But I think the Broncos fan base wants to hear one of their own. And judging by the comments here on the interaction, the positivity we got, I think it was very successful for the first time. I think Christy did great.
Yep, it's going to be a lot of fun, and we're looking forward, of course, to having Christy back at some point, and that'll be in the near future, hopefully when we get a little bit closer to actual football, whether it's training camp. I mean, man, Zach, I'm just thinking about what it's going to be like when training camp rolls around, doing the daily podcast and getting back to normal. It's going to be quite a lift and a boost. Quick shout out here to Terry jumping in, one of our superstars up in Canada. # state of being all day long. Really appreciate your support, my friend. He says, Broncos country, the best. MHH chat, the best. Chad and Zach, love you all. # state of being. Terry, we love you too, my friend. Hope you and yours are doing okay up there. And Steven, you inspired that article, my dog. So, hey, and also the Jerry Jeudy one that we ran earlier, day or two, it might have been yesterday. That was inspired by you as well. So really appreciate you pinging us when you see something interesting on the Broncos, because this time of year, I'll be honest with you, I'm not gonna lie. I mean, sometimes we got to get a little bit creative to come up with compelling content to put on milehighhuddle.com. So we appreciate you. Good looking out, my friend. Let's see. This is a comment from Jeff. He says, Zach, I've witnessed a few pods, but I like the new background. Looking forward to see what you fill those shelves with.
Yeah, I got some, finally that I'm not sick anymore, I got some things coming on the shelf behind me. We're going to do that book idea, Chad, that we're getting into, and I have some books I want to put up there. So it's better than a blank whiteboard, I'll say. So I'm glad you appreciate that and notice that, Jeff.
Frankie jumping in to show some support and love for Christy. He says, cheers to Miss Christy. Appreciate you, Frankie, my friend.
Thank you, Frankie.
Also, you got Ryan. There goes the only lady I bend my knee to, Queen of MHH. Long may she reign. And hopefully she's in the chat. I don't know if she's watching.
I hope she's listening.
Yeah, I hope she's watching, listening, and she can hear some of this awesome feedback. Yeah, Mitch, I tightened it up for you, dog. So you're welcome.
The things our fans notice, Chad.
It's awesome. It's awesome. Terry here, bringing up the Holy I guess, triumvirate of emojis here. He wanted to know for lock plus or minus
Plus or minus,
4,000
over-under.
yards. That's a good question. If Kristie, if you're back in the chat, maybe answer that, and then we can put it on the screen for everybody to see. But Terry, thank you for the super, bro. Yeah, next time, again, guys, when we have her back on and when we have another superstar, if there's a question we weren't able to get to, some of the technical difficulties and whatnot, we'll circle back and we'll get to them. And here's one from Bronco Batman too, who wants to know, thank you for the super. Favorite game you've been to? Kristie he wants to know of you, Kristie, if you're back in the chat. Maybe you're listening to this after the fact. I don't know, but a couple more questions for you here.
She should be encouraged, though, Chad. I mean, the feedback and the questions she's getting, it's phenomenal.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And Angela jumping in up in Canada, $7 super. Really appreciate you.
That's what I'm saying. Look at the support.
Right here, KR Rushmore, repping the ladies. Why can't we send 7 from Canada? Oh, I don't know. ARG, appreciate MHH. Congrats on 7K. Hashtag state of being. Angela, I really don't know the answer to that. Some of these YouTube mysteries are and will probably always be mysteries to us, but really appreciate your support.
Yeah.
It means a lot. Bronx legend in the house, showing some love. We also shouted him out. A lot of you, I'm sure, noticed that on Twitter and on Instagram. He got his football priest hat, sent us the selfie. So he says, always love to MHH, hashtag state of being.
Thank you, Bronx.
Hope you're doing okay in your neck of the woods, my friend. All right, let's see what we got from Gary Palmer. Ooh, I almost thought that was not family friendly. Thank goodness. Well done, Gary, by the way. Very discerning. Now I know I can trust you, my friend. Denver Broncos for life, he says. Hey, Chad, I think the horse and clock means it's Bronco time. Well said. Hey, well said. There's a couple more questions. All right, Zach, I'm going to leave it up to Buona Beast to find the next super here. I want to get your thoughts on a specific issue that popped up over the weekend. And this is another example of a fan bringing to my attention something that grew into a story. And that is that Courtland Sutton, who we all know had a phenomenal second year, over 70 receptions, just north of 1,100 yards, 6 touchdowns, ended up in the Pro Bowl as a result of his performance. And he did so while playing with 3 different starting quarterbacks. But it was just brought to my attention, Zach, today, in fact, this morning. According to Pro Football Reference, Sutton led all NFL wide receivers in broken tackles on receptions. So he had 12 such plays, and he stood alone among wide receivers. There were multiple NFL running backs who had double-digit broken tackles on receptions. But the next highest wide receiver to check in was DeAndre Hopkins, and he had 9. So, it's not necessarily, world-changing insight here, Zach, but it just goes to show you why how the Broncos are thinking about this offseason, because everyone knows how phenomenal Sutton is as a vertical threat, right? Going up my ball, turning 50-50 balls into 80-20 balls, jumping in front of defenders in the end zone to score touchdowns, acrobatic catches and whatnot. But I think something that gets underrated is his ability to break those tackles, his physicality. And, that was somewhat muted down the stretch because no other wide receivers really, really stepped up. And so opposing defensive coordinators were able to bracket him and kind of stop him from getting those shorter dump offs that he could break tackles and whatnot. But if you catch the vision that the Broncos have here, Zach, of, all right, you got Jerry Jeudy, you got KJ Hamler, you got Noah Fant, you've got all these other threats. If even one of those guys on a given passing concept can win their one-on-one matchup, the next time they run that formation, the defensive coordinator is going to maybe not cheat and have a guy over Sutton. He gets his one-on-one matchups, and it ends up being a smorgasbord for Drew Lock to distribute the football. But just another example of how phenomenal Sutton was last year.
I think it's pretty significant because he can do his damage over the middle. Like you mentioned, he does his damage in coverage and snatching defensive back souls. He will wear you down in the end zone, in the red zone, over the middle of the field. I see a lot of Calvin Johnson in Courtland Sutton. Might be a little hyperbole to say that at this stage in his career, but he's going to be an all-time great Broncos receiver. I think he'll go down better than Demaryius Thomas. You might want to crucify me for that if you disagree. I think he will be when it's all said and done, especially with Drew Lock as his quarterback, hopefully the next 8 to 10 years. Huge fan of Courtland Sutton. I'm with Christy. He's my favorite Broncos player on the roster, and I love seeing these statistics because he's going to become a household name up there with the DeAndre Hopkins, up there with the Megatrons. Love Sutton.
By the way, Frank, really appreciate that $2 super. You jumping in. That means a lot. And I don't recognize your name, so welcome to the stream and really appreciate your support on Super Chat, Frank. It goes a long way. Believe that. And yep, James, you are absolutely right about Kristie. Amen to that. Let's grab Pobby jumping in, showing a very generous Super Chat here. We appreciate you, Pobby.
Thank you,
You mean a lot to us.
Amazing.
You know that. She says, so great to have you on the pod, Kristie. And again, I don't know if you're able to check on your side, Zach, if you could scroll and see if Kristie's been able to rejoin the chat. We don't know what she had planned after her appearance tonight. She might not have been able to.
I haven't seen her in the chat.
But she'll be listening to this after the fact. So she says, so great to have you on the pod, Kristie. Thank you for being so brave to come on, especially as a lady. You are amazing. Love MHH family. Go Broncos. Very true. It can be nerve-wracking. Guys like Zach and I, we're a little bit used to it. Obviously, we've been doing this a long time. But as Zach said, I can think to the first time I did a live stream, I think it was on Facebook, and this is a long time ago, dude. It's nerve-wracking. It really is, man. It's not just that you have to come up with the content and keep it interesting and kind of speak off the top of your head, but knowing people are watching you, and it can really screw with people. But
And
Kristie did great.
You're also staring at yourself, and no one ever likes to do that either. So it's if anyone wants to go back and watch my first ever Facebook Live, I was a wreck in that. So Kristie, I think, did very, very well. Even if it was just audio, I think her answers were on point, and I think the feedback that she got from the audience, Chad, was phenomenal.
Absolutely. Brandon here has a question. Do you guys think the Broncos are Super Bowl contenders in the next few years? Thank you for the question, Brandon. I wouldn't say they were contenders this year. If your question would have been, are the Broncos a contender in 2020?
No.
Define contender. I think they're a contender for the playoffs, but I wouldn't categorize them as a contender for the Super Bowl. In the next few years, I could see that happening, but we still just need to see this new collection of dudes out on the field and see a little bit of a return on the moves that have been made so far.
Yeah, I would say that 2021 would be the absolute earliest the Broncos would be contenders. And that's only if Drew Lock takes that next step, a quantum leap forward, not just one step forward, but a leap forward. It could happen. They have the talent, they have the coaching, they have the defense, they have the pieces in place. I'm with Chad. I think they will be back in the playoffs this season. Super Bowl, though, is a little too optimistic for me. A couple years from now, absolutely. If Drew Lock takes that next step, it's all on Lock.
Bushido jumping in with the comment when we were talking to Kristie about the key Elway moments. The helicopter is what made me a Broncos fan. And I'm glad you brought up the helicopter, obviously a very iconic moment in Elway's career. And speaking as somebody who was, I was basically an adult in February or whenever that was, February or January of 1998 when that game actually took place, I can remember it perfectly. The Broncos came into that game against the Packers, Super Bowl 32, as a wild card team. So they had already fought 3 playoff games just to get to the Super Bowl. Meanwhile, you had the juggernaut, man. You had the defending world champion Green Bay Packers who had just decimated all comers in the NFC and were expected to completely trounce the Broncos, especially knowing that every Super Bowl the Broncos had appeared in up to that point, they had just been demolished. It wasn't just nail-biting losses. It was they were demolished and blown out in the Super Bowl to a point where John Elway's mom once privately said to him when he went to that fourth Super Bowl, Super Bowl 32, I don't even want you to go to the Super Bowl because I just don't want to bear the thought of you losing another one. It's so painful. Well, all those considerations play into this. No one in the media realm was giving the Broncos a chance at all in this game. Everyone just thought, history will repeat itself. Broncos will get trounced. And it was a fight from the get-go. The Broncos came ready to play, popping the Packers in the mouth from the get-go. But the Packers were a very good team, Zach, and they were, they played their brand of football. But the moment I knew the Broncos were going to win that game was the helicopter. When Elway, at whatever he was, I want to say he was 35, goes scrambling, and he dives headfirst like that, gets turned into a helicopter, doesn't fumble, gets up all fired up. That's when I knew goodness gracious, the Broncos are going to win this game.
That game was actually just being replayed on NFL Network, and as many times as you watch that, Chad, it's still as epic as the first time. His determination and his fight and his will to win, that's why he's a Hall of Famer, and that's why he is the Duke of Denver. It's an all-time classic play that cannot ever get old.
We don't want to neglect our awesome Facebook audience here. Andy has a question for us. He says, do you guys think that training camp will allow spectators traveling from Kansas, USA? Andy, I really don't think so. I really don't think it's going to happen. I think there's still a really good chance that fans will be allowed to in the stands in some form, even if it's a half or a third capacity or something to that effect. Training camp, though, I just don't think there's enough in it for the NFL to really have to want to worry about muddying the water and creating a new concern and consideration for the team when by that point they just want to focus on football. I doubt you'll see spectators at training camp.
I'm with you on that. I think in a best case scenario, they would have limited or spaced out fans on the field, definitely outdoors. They wouldn't have anyone indoors. Maybe they would have testing or some sort of temperature reading. Chad, I don't want to get into that topic, but I don't see it happening. It's just as Chad said, I don't think the NFL would risk a potential outbreak, which would cancel the season for training camp. I think they'll wait till the season, and then they'll have hopefully fans in the stands. But I wouldn't get your hopes up for training camp.
Zach, if you wouldn't mind grabbing this super from KP, I just realized we jumped one of our superstars, Christian. I'm going to run back and grab it from you too.
Yeah, all good. Kevin dropping $5. He wants to know, appreciate that, Kevin. He wants to know, I wasn't going to talk about the bookshelf. Looks like your 4th grade report card is up there. Just busting your chops. Love y'all. Thanks, Kara. Yeah, that's actually a writing award. It's not my report card, but it looks like one. I can see it's a little, I can see where you get the confusion from, but I do appreciate the love for that.
You're a character, KP. You're kind of like Mark Langley. You make us laugh and stuff, dude. So that's good. Just don't try to sucker us into the word that shall go unnamed.
Really.
Okay. All right. We skipped over Christian. The stream did a jump while we were talking to Kristie. So let's grab this one from Christian. He wants to know. Really appreciate the super chat, my friend.
Thank you, Christian.
Are you able to have me on the show sometime? Well, Christian, as someone who's been a longtime supporter of this podcast and a bona fide super chat superstar, that is definitely something that we will consider. We don't have an exact plan on who we're going to be inviting on specifically. We have a few in mind, obviously, but we will put you in the rotation. And when the time comes, Zach, we will reach out to Christian and see what we can do about organizing that.
Yeah, this is definitely something we want to do, is incorporate more of the Broncos fan base. And as Kristie kind of proved, that it's fun and it's interactive, and I think the people get a kick out of it. So like Chad said, we don't really know how the setup is going to be. We don't really have any predetermined guests that we want to bring on, just other than Kristie for now. But we definitely want to start rotating, and we'll start to take applications as they work, Chad.
Yeah, and if we don't reach out to you right away, don't take it personal. It will happen. But we definitely want to bring on the superstars, those who have been supporting us on Super Chat for the last 9 months. Those are the people we want to get on the show and get to know them better and allow our audience to get to know them better and show them some love. So speaking of a superstar, King Hicks in the house with a $5 super.
Thank you, King.
Appreciate you, bro. He says, got to go. Got that essential work to do. I worked 96 hours last week.
Jeez.
Scheduled 80 for this week. Much love to my MHH family. Catch y'all soon. # Broncos World. Man, you are a beast, King Hicks, working that much, man.
I want to give you a salute, King. That's unbelievable, man. We appreciate all the work that you're doing. That's phenomenal.
And he's doing it on the supply chain side. And even though the word that shall go unnamed, no one, I don't know about you, Zach, but it's been a long time, many weeks since the last time I went into a grocery store and there was no TP, there was no hand sanitizer. Like, there are still some supply issues with regard to beef. From what I've been able to see, the price of beef is really high right now because it's a supply and a demand issue.
Tuna fish as well. I don't understand it. But.
Yes. But it's guys like King Hicks that are keeping that supply chain going. So appreciate you, my friend. Let's grab Mike. Speaking of superstars, really appreciate the donation. Mike. As always, Mike, every single podcast, you are consistent, and we appreciate you, my friend. He says, would you rank the Broncos defense higher than the Chargers? That's actually a really good question. And thank you, Mike. That's a really good question, Zach, because the Chargers already were pretty stacked defensively, and then they went out and signed. I mean, basically, they have every veteran corner in the NFL now plays for the Los Angeles Chargers. That's hyperbole, but it shows you how they've chosen to invest. They're basically following the Seattle Seahawks model, knowing that Phillip Rivers is gone. Whether it ends up being Tyrod, let's face it, he's a placeholder, he's a stopgap, or if it ends up being Justin Herbert at some point this year, which it almost assuredly will be. They're going the idea of building the nest in terms of bolstering the defense and allowing Justin, hopefully in that sense, allow the young quarterback and an offense that's going to take some time to kind of get going to have as many additional possessions as possible. So that's a good question. What would your answer be?
I'm taking my bias away. I'm still going to say the Broncos. I just think the coaching makes a difference, and I think the offense makes a difference. I think Tyrod Taylor, if he starts, even if he doesn't start, Justin Herbert is going to go through his growing pains, his rookie pains. He's going to put that defense on the field a lot, and that's going to hurt the defense. I like Bosa. I like Derwin James a lot. I'm not a big fan of Chris Harris Jr. I think that's not a monumental upgrade for them. They have a solid defense, but I'm rocking with the Broncos. Better offense, better coaching, better defense on all three levels: linebacker, defensive line, and secondary as well. So I like the coaching. I like Anthony Lynn on the Chargers. I just don't like it more than the Broncos.
Well said. Well said. I mean, there's something to be said also for the Broncos. They have a lot of new pieces too in terms of the secondary. You still have Justin Simmons. You still have Kareem Jackson as far as the back end, but the cornerback rotation, for the most part, at least at the top of the depth chart, is going to be completely different than the one last year. So in that sense, it's hard to kind of know what to expect for sure. Meanwhile, you've got Jarrell Casey basically taking over Derek Wolfe's role. You got Shelby coming back. Everyone knows Shelby. Everyone knows Mike Purcell. And Chubb coming back.
Yes.
Plus, you're waiting to see, was Alexander Johnson a flash in the pan? Is there? So for the Broncos, I think it's fair to say right now on paper, the Chargers are a more stacked defense. But the Broncos, I would say, have the potential to not only match them, but surpass them if all the ducks fall in the row the way they need to in terms of Callahan coming back and Chubb.
I was going to say Callahan, if he plays up to par, he can be better on a per snap basis than Chris Harris Jr. was last year. I think you're right in the sense that the Chargers have more proven talent right now on paper, but I think the Broncos, when the season gets up and starts playing out, I think they're going to have a top 5, definitely top 10 defense, and the Chargers will be, I think, just outside of that.
Let's grab Glenn here, jumping in, one of our superstars. Appreciate you, my friend.
Thank you, Glenn.
Enjoyed having Kristie on tonight, but disappointed Zach left the tux in the closet, though. Also, every time Locke opens his mouth, his leadership shows. You know what I just realized? I think we were blaming KP for, it was Glenn, if I'm not mistaken, that got us on the word that she'll go unmentioned.
I thought it was Kevin, not to put blame on anyone, but I'm pretty sure it was Kevin.
I think we painted Kevin with Glenn's stripes, to be honest with you. I could be wrong on that, and if so, I apologize to both of you. Well, one of you. But Glenn, appreciate you, my friend. He says, also, every time Locke opens his mouth, his leadership shows. Indeed. Yeah. And that was something I wrote about over the weekend in terms of, the situation that's taking place in our country right now from a civil rights movement perspective. This isn't a situation where Locke necessarily needs to be the guy that leads from the front, but as a leader, he needs to lead. He needs to be there. He needs to show his face. He needs to speak on the issues and allow his black teammates to lead from the front. A franchise quarterback is always going to have more of a pressure on them to be a leader. And I think so far from what we've seen from him, even as a second-year guy, Zach, he's doing a really good job managing that role. And it doesn't feel contrived. It doesn't feel forced or faked. It feels legit.
That's exactly true, and it's a great point. It feels like if Paxton Lynch would have done that or Case Keenum would have done that, it would have come off disingenuous. But Locke was out there leading the forefront. He was out there marching with his teammates, and I agree with the comment. Every time he speaks, you hear that alpha personality, you hear that leadership just ooze out of him, and you can't teach that. You can't learn it. You can't buy it. It's not taught. It's just you're born with it or you're not. And it's going to serve the Broncos well. Let me tell you something right now. Him being out there marching did not go unnoticed in the Broncos locker room. That's going to carry this team a long way from a chemistry and locker room standpoint.
Indeed. When we talk about Locke having the it factor, that's a big part of what we mean as well. Jay Boss jumping in with a $5 super. Really appreciate you, my friend. says, go Broncos. Who's receiving kicks and who's got punts? From Broken Arrow, Oklahoma. Awesome, dude. Hashtag, that is a good movie. Hashtag state of being. Indeed. Jay, thank you for the super and the question. Who you got receiving kicks and punts this year, Zach?
KJ Hamler, I don't want to give a cop-out kind of answer, but this is part of the reason why the Broncos use a second-round draft pick on the guy. He has just lightning-quick speed. He's going to take, I think, a few, I would say if not to the house, he's going to break a few big returns this season for Denver. I don't think Deontay Spencer is going to be on the roster for one job. I think Hamler will double up at receiver and on special teams as well, Chad.
I'll just say this. For whatever reason, Vic Fangio, following the draft, made it a point to say, we really like Deontay Spencer in that role again. So I'm with you, though, in terms of it makes more sense if it's to have it be KJ because it kills two birds with one stone. You no longer have to carry 6 wide receivers. You can take that 6th spot that you would carry a wide out and put it somewhere else where you need a strength in numbers. It makes sense to me, but for whatever reason, Fangio wanted to bring that to the fore. So don't be completely stunned if they do end up carrying 6 wide receivers and if they, keep Deontay at least as the kick returner.
Do you know how I interpret that, though? And I might be wrong. It might be just Fangio challenging Hamler, same as he did Von Miller last year. It could be him making him earn that role just because he's a second-round pick. It's not given to him. Deontay Spencer's the incumbent. He had the job last year, and KJ Hamler kind of has to earn it. I might be wrong, but that's just my interpretation.
That's a fair point. I mean, the best coaches use that kind of I don't want to necessarily call it passive-aggressive, but the best coaches are also excellent psychologists. Bill Parcells is a great example of that. And he was a defensive-minded guy, as is Fangio. So you could be right on that, Zach. KP jumping in again. Really appreciate that. Very generous super, my friend.
Thank you, Kevin.
He says, you guys do a fantastic job night after night. Y'all know your stuff, and it's refreshing. Thanks for your coverage and consistency. Hashtag tailgate hint.
We're gonna do that one of these days, just to fulfill Kevin's prophecy there. And
It's
we were
gonna
wrong,
happen.
I believe, Chad. I believe it was Glenn. You were right.
Yeah. So KP,
yeah, our apologies.
we wrongly tagged you with that, and that's my fault. So sorry, bro. We love you. From Jeff, everything you're describing right now when I was talking about Super Bowl 32, the helicopter, is why that Super Bowl win is the greatest sports moment for me in my life. It was very powerful for Broncos fans up to that point. I mean, Brian saying Elway was 37, then that might be true. Either way, that only bolsters the point even more, though. But for Broncos fans at that point, man, they had been long suffering, and the Broncos had reached the pinnacle 4 different times they'd gotten to the Super Bowl, gotten trounced every time, 3 of them under Pat Bowlen's watch. So for the Broncos to not only emerge victorious, it was so meaningful for fans, but also the fact that they beat the defending world champs. Right. And it also was the first time that an AFC team had won the Super Bowl in a long time. It was over a decade since an AFC team had won the Super Bowl, and it kind of reset the power structure in the NFL, as it were. Broncos, of course, go back-to-back. Then the Ravens come in and win one, and the Patriots dynasty that ensued thereafter, and the rest is history. So very cool to hear that, though, Jeff. Paul jumping in with a very generous super.
Thank you,
also
Paul. Appreciate
a longtime listener of Mile High Huddle podcast, very engaged and active. Appreciate you, Paul. He says, Christy is a super fan and even greater person. Hashtag salute the queen. How are they going to split season ticket holders each home game? So in terms of if they do end up, I assume what he's speaking to is if they do end up making limited capacity for attendance. Do you think that's what he's talking about? Ticket holders for home games? What's your answer?
I wish I can tell you. It's going to be a cluster. I mean, NFL teams are standing to lose a lot of revenue from box office concessions, ticket sales. It's going to be a mess. I don't know how they're going to do it. I would assume that maybe the season ticket holders get priority, get first privilege. I just don't know, Chad. It's going to be weird.
I don't either. And it's a ball of wax that, frankly, is unprecedented. NFL's never had to deal with this as an issue. So we're just in a holding pattern. If they do end up having to limit attendance, let some fans in, they're going to have to come up with a system for season ticket holders. And we're all waiting to see what that solution might end up being. Mark, it's good to see you, my friend, jumping in. $2 super.
Thank you, Mark.
What's up, my guys? Chad, hashtag Chad Gangsta, hashtag Uncle Zach.
Uncle
Purdy.
now.
Uncle. Yeah.
Like it.
Mark, you're someone we'll probably want to see if you ever want to come on the show one of these days, one of our longtime superstars. So I'll holler at you. Eddie, jumping in, $2 super. Good to see you. My guys, thank you for this Sunday pod. Amen, dude. You know what's interesting is someone pointed out to me, Zach, no one in the Broncos media world puts out any content on Saturday and Sunday. Everyone's Monday through Friday, and it surprises a lot of people that we put in this content on Saturdays and Sundays. Now, Zach and I have always kept Sunday as a podcast day, even in the off season, because we're the ones on the tradition of our site. We do the gut reaction to every game, and most games, of course, they're on Sunday. So we've just decided to keep Sunday in the rotation, even during the off season. And it's glad to know, we're glad to hear that you guys appreciate that. So, and you guys make Sundays also very, very much something we look forward to.
I was going to say, we're not patting ourselves on the back because we're the only ones that do it. The demand was there for it, Chad. I mean, Broncos fans, and even we got a question that we're going to get to in a few minutes. They're asking about the other DVD pod. The demand and the groundswell for it is there. So it's all for you guys. We're so happy you guys love it. And we'll continue cranking out 7 days a week, every single week, every single year.
That's right. Callie Dave jumping in with the super. Appreciate you, my friend.
Thank you, Dave.
He says, KR, great heart. Drafting Gradishar made me a Broncos fan. So he's going back to the Ohio State product and arguably the most egregious Hall of Fame snub in Broncos history, Randy Gradishar. That's cool, man. And honestly, it really makes me angry. And this is what is so unjust about this situation is that when the name Gradishar comes up, we should be celebrating. The first thought coming out of our mouths should be celebrating what he did as a Denver Bronco and what he meant to this franchise. But instead, what comes out is just this indignant, righteous anger over the fact that he is still being denied the Hall of Fame. And if he was in any other, if he had played all those, he kind of like Luke Kuechly, he retired at the pinnacle of his career. And that's one of the things that frankly has hurt him a little bit in the Hall of Fame voting. But nevertheless, it's egregious, Zach, that he is not in the Hall of Fame. But Dave, very cool memory. We appreciate you sharing that.
Him, Mecklenburg, Mike Shanahan. It's just a disaster. And you're right, Chad. If he played for the Cowboys or the Steelers or the 49ers, he'd be in by now. But hopefully in the future, we'll be celebrating Gradishar's Hall of Fame induction.
Steve wants to know if he could come on the pod sometime without the camera. We prefer to have the camera. Now, the deal with Christy tonight was completely unforeseen. When we did a sound test and mic test and camera test before we went live, everything was fine. The technical difficulties we had were after the fact once we had already gone live, so we couldn't really take time to fix them. But this is a podcast, yes, but it's also a live streaming event. So in a perfect world, we would want you to be on screen. But you know what? If not, even if you have something that you really don't want to do that, we might be able to make some kind of accommodation.
Something we can consider, maybe having like a call-in feature.
That's true. I can look into that.
Audio-only feature, yeah.
Derek Wright jumping in, $10 super. Appreciate you,
Derek.
my friend. And Derek, are you on Twitter? If so, reach out to me, connect. He says, what do you guys think about picking up Melvin Gordon? Uh-oh, here we go. Do you think he can be a big factor in getting us rolling week one? The defense will have to be keyed in to stopping him. So let's just, Zach, completely remove the money issues and the Lindsey implications. As a new contributor on this offense, what's your answer for Derek?
I don't think he can hurt the offense. I think he can be a help to Drew Lock in the passing game. I think he's a three-down back the way the Broncos foresee him to be, and he's had some fumbling issues. If he can get that corrected, he's going to be an asset to this offense. I just think, though, his presence will be a bigger factor for Phillip Lindsay. Not to make it a Lindsay-centric conversation, I just think they're both going to play into each other in that 1A and 1B role. No matter what the Broncos think right now, Lindsay will get his touches. I think he'll make the most of it. I'm not hating the Gordon pickup. I just hate the contract, Chad, they signed him to. That's my biggest thing with him.
Exactly. I mean, he's not a bad running back. He is.
No.
I mean, is he one of the league's elite running backs? I would be hard-pressed to say that based on his last 2 years. But I remain completely open to the possibility that that's just the way the Chargers offense kind of rolled him It's just kind of a product of the way that the Chargers wanted to run their offense. That's a good way for me to say it. He might, if given the chance alongside Phillip Lindsay to kind of be the tip of the spear, and he gets double-digit carries week in and week out, he might end up being that player we saw the first 3 years he was in the league. Now, last year, he was a little bit muted because he held out, and then by the time he came back, he was rusty. And that affected him, but he still put up pretty solid numbers. So he's going to mean a lot for this offense. And Lindsay, it's only going to make Lindsay better, and vice versa, that competition and just learning from each other as well. So I think he's going to be really good for this offense. Is he going to be worthy of the $8 million a year?
I don't know.
I'm with you on that, my friend. So we shall see. All right, where are we at? We're at 55 minutes. Okay, we got a little bit of time, and if we go a little bit over tonight, that's okay. Let's grab Jody here. My 2 bold predictions. Jones, Draymond starts over Shelby Harris on the D-line, and by week 6, Sternad will play more snaps per game than Todd Davis. What's your reaction to either one of those 2 bold predictions?
I do think that by midseason or maybe a little after that, Sternad will be the starter opposite A.J. Johnson. So I'm with you on that. And in terms of what was the first part of the question, Chad? Put it back up for a second. Sorry.
The first part was
Jones over Shelby Harris. Yeah, it's going to take, I think, a dominant training camp and a dominant preseason for that to happen. There's a reason why Shelby Harris came back. Even if it was a prove-it deal, he showed last year what he can do in a Vic Fangio system. But Draymond Jones was a high-round draft pick. He fits this system like a glove. I think he is a long-term successor to Wolf and Shelby Harris. It could happen. I don't think it's that bold.
I don't disagree with any of that. It wouldn't surprise me to see Sternad take over for Davis. It's in the Broncos' best interest if Sternad can earn it and get there and justify it. It's in the team's best interest to eventually pass that torch to Sternad as soon as possible, because Davis is in a contract year. If he doesn't step up and earn that, then the Broncos are going to have to make an semi-uninformed decision next spring with regard to whether or not they bring Davis back and whether or not Sternad is ready to kind of take on that mantle. So hopefully it does happen, and it wouldn't surprise me if it does by the time the season's over. Terry jumping back in, showing some love. MHH community is the best.
That's right.
We agree with you, my friend. And you're a big part of that and a big reason why that is absolutely true. From across the pond, here's James Campbell, as consistent as the day is long. We appreciate you, bro.
The ambassador.
Indeed. And I'm going to be reaching out to you here pretty soon, and we'll talk about some stuff. He says, I said it before, Locke is the type of quarterback I'd run through a wall for, getting back to our previous topic of him being a leader. And considering I'm not Casper, that will hurt. Oozes intangibles and leadership.
Yeah.
He really does, man. Like, there were a lot of video clips over the peaceful protest march at the Colorado State Capitol over the weekend, Saturday. And one of the clips shows Locke, who's just, he's got PR, he's got Patrick Smythe there. Smythe's there to kind of, attend to him, make sure he doesn't get into any hot water, for lack of a better term. But you had fans coming up to Locke at various points and either just, wanting a high five or a shake or whatever. And Locke was just very nonchalant about the whole thing, welcoming to anyone that I saw in terms of approaching him. And that only translates to his teammates. And the funny thing about it, Zach, is one of the reasons why he talks about here again, oozes intangibles and leadership. The players know and recognize that it's not put on. It's not contrived. It's not fake. That's the genuine article from Drew Lock.
And what I noticed, and you're absolutely right, Chad, what I noticed, the march yesterday was predominantly a lot of black Broncos players, not to make it a race thing, but Drew Lock, being white, was out there in the front leading the charge. And like I said earlier, that does not go unnoticed. That's how you build trust, and that's how you build connections in the locker room. Every time you see it with him, he charged up the Broncos on the field. He's charging them and leading them, literally leading them off the field. You have to love what you see from him in his brief young career to this point.
Amen. Let's grab Zyka here, jumping in, $5 super.
Thank
really
you,
appreciate you, my friend, and you've become even more so involved in what we're doing, and it's cool to see. Zyka says, how concerned are you guys with the unknown of our cornerbacks, specifically Callahan and rookie third-rounder Michael Ojemudia, and our linebackers in coverage? More points equals more passes at you. So, in other words, if Locke and the offense end up being what everyone thinks they're going to be this year and they put up more points, you can think back to the Peyton Manning days when this was an offensive first team. Teams get behind, they throw. So how are you feeling, Zach, about Callahan, Ojemudia, and linebackers in coverage?
I mean, they all have to prove themselves. It's a great question and a great point that I really haven't given too much thought to. I wasn't the biggest fan of Michael O, but among the recent Broncos cornerbacks, he can be the best. He was handpicked by Vic Fangio. He fits the scheme. Callahan, we saw him in Chicago. He was a pretty elite slot cornerback. Missed all of last season. We don't really know where he stands in terms of his injury. But if they play up to standard, I am not worried about the Broncos' pass defense. When you have Simmons in there, when you have A.J. Boye in there, you have Kareem Jackson in there, and the linebackers. We talked about Sternad. A.J. Johnson's dynamic. He's a 3-down player. If they can just play to potential, I'm not worried about that. And because also, Chad, when you have to pass more, it gives the Broncos more chance to get sacks as well. They're going to, knowing that, they don't have to sell out to stop the run. They can send their pass rushers, Jerome Casey, Von Miller, Bradley Chubb. It can work both ways as well.
Absolutely true. Absolutely true. I'm moving it along a little bit just because we crossed the hour mark. So let's grab Nad Ludlow jumping in, just showing support as always.
Thank you, Nad.
We appreciate you, my friend. James has a specific question about programming. Thanks for the super again, James. He says, Christy did a great job tonight too. Hope to have her and others on the pod soon. Is there any word on the second DVDD pod chat? Hashtag Broncos World. Not yet. Right now at this stage, with MHH having a new podcast on Saturdays, we're allowing them to have that day to let their podcast kind of breathe and begin. But it is absolutely something we're considering here in the very, very near future. So we'll keep you, basically for those of you who missed it, what they're asking is Dove Valley Deep Divers kind of campaigning with the momentum of our European, specifically fans and listeners, to have a show, a live stream Saturday or Sunday, we'll see, dedicated to it being a time where they can attend. So like James right now being in the UK, depending on exactly where he's at, he's like 9 hours, I think, ahead of us in mountain time. So for him, it's quite late, or quite early, depending on how you look at it. So for European fans, which it's a massive contingent, we have, as you guys know, a lot of superstars that are Europeans, a lot of listeners that are European Broncos fans. So he's wanting to know, Zach, about having a second pod for Dove Valley Deep Divers that takes place during the day when it's more conducive to European time.
But that's what I mean. That was my previous point, is that the demand we're getting for these pods has just been incredible, Chad. We keep launching more and more, and fans are asking for more and more. And we want you to know that we give it back to you guys. We're launching these for you guys because you want that so much. And we hear that and we take it into consideration and we make things happen because of that. It wasn't a flex on our part. It was actually a flex to you guys and a compliment to you guys.
Well said, dude. Couldn't have said it better myself. All right, let's see here. We're running out of time, so let me just make sure we haven't missed anybody here tonight.
2 a.m. for James, though. Wow, that's dedication right there.
That it is. Terry jumping in. 2 p.m. for everyone. Hashtag Broncos. Appreciate you, bro. Let me just make sure I haven't skipped anybody. Glenn jumping in. Now I got to read yours first before, silently before I read them out loud. Okay. Hope I didn't kill my chances of being way down the list as a guest on the pod for my remaining nameless antics. Sorry, KP, who we wrongly accused of being the guy that did that. Hashtag tailgating tent, hashtag guest in 2024. No, it's all good, dude. We hold no grudges, and you're definitely someone that we have in the pipeline for bringing on and featuring you as a superstar. So we will be in touch and give you guys more information on that as we get a little bit closer. All right, let me just make sure here. I think that's pretty much it, guys. So listen, thanks to each and every one of you for joining us tonight. If we did not get to one of your questions or topics you wanted us to talk about tonight, obviously the first half of the show's focus was Christy and just celebrating that and kicking off 7K week. Tomorrow, we're going to have more 7K oriented content. We're going to share our own top moments. Both Zach and myself, we're going to go through the results of an interesting poll. We're going to continue to kind of graft in celebrating the Broncos in a way this week as we are getting over that 7K hump. And welcome also to all our new subscribers on YouTube. We are glad to have you guys. So we'll be back in the saddle tomorrow, same time, 6 p.m. Mountain, 8 p.m. Eastern. And you're not going to want to miss those shows either. And then as we march through the summer, we're going to have and reach out to various superstars to have them on the show. But Zach, even though it wasn't perfect from a technical perspective, Kristie came on, dropped knowledge. We learned a lot talking to her about how she became a fan and how she views this team. So overall, I say it was a success.
I do too, and based on the comments, like I said, Chad, the feedback has been phenomenal, and it's a credit to you guys being so encouraging, being so supportive. But I think she handled herself really well, and it's always great to get that insight from a true diehard, hardcore Broncos fan. So we're looking forward to doing more of that.
Yeah, and whatever you do, Kristie, if you're listening to this after the fact, do not kick yourself about having the camera issues. You couldn't control that.
Yeah.
You did a great job, so don't even sweat it. But gang, make sure you are following the show on Twitter at HuddleUpPod. You can find my partner here, Zach Kelberman, on Twitter at KelbermanNFL, myself at Chad N. Jensen. And like I said, we'll be back in the saddle tomorrow night for Monday's show, 6 p.m. Mountain, 8 p.m. Eastern. We have some content, some topics, as I mentioned, that we're going to get to. Plus, I have a feeling we're going to have a little bit of news tomorrow as it relates to your Denver Broncos. I'm not going to spoil anything, but I think we'll have some things to talk about additionally tomorrow. So stay tuned for that. In the meantime, Zach, have a great start to your week, my man.
You as well, Chad. Salute all you guys. See you guys tomorrow.
Mile high salute to our Super Chat superstars. We love you guys and appreciate your support more than you know. Oh, and here she is. Sorry for all the tech difficulties. I have such a great appreciation for the job these guys do. It's all good. It's all good. Everyone was just happy to hear from you. So we'll look forward to talking to you all again tomorrow night. For Zach Kelberman, I'm Chad Jensen. We'll talk to you then.